Hiya! Welcome! This is Minidisc Monday number 13, I think we're on now. And today we're going to look at the first solo album from one of the 1990s biggest teen idols, trying to reinvent himself in a more sort of contemporary or adult manner, but while still catering to all the teeny boppers as well. A jack of all trades, and in my opinion a master of maybe not quite so many. It is of course Robbie Williams I'm talking about, and this is his debut solo album on Minidisc, Live Through a Lens, with its unusual sideways on sleeve art there on the Chrysalis label, I think. This came out in 1997. It was a bit of a slow burner, this album, for Mr. Williams. Apparently it debuted at number 11 on the album chart and it fell out of the top 100 fairly quickly, but it had a renaissance the following year thanks to the release of Angels as a single, and that was kind of his last roll of the dice because he'd had meetings with his record company who were unhappy with how the album had done and how the previous singles had done, and he just said, let me release Angels, do a video, put it out, etc. And that obviously became an absolute smash hit, and he's had a pretty massive career ever since. So here's a look at the album. I'll do my usual and get it open and show you the disc itself. The artwork there, and we've not got any tracks on the back, but we've got a bit of copyright bump with the Chrysalis logo there on the left. And the booklet itself is one of these concertina style glossy inserts that I hate because I can never fold them back up properly. They just want to make it quite big because of all the lyrics and stuff that they're including. And amazingly I managed to fold it up fine. So I did listen to this album just before I started filming because I've not heard it in a long time. I've only ever listened to the album before once. I managed to get this and Robbie's next two albums on Minidisc some years ago, all for relatively cheap. I don't think I paid more than maybe £15 or £20 for any of them. I'm not a Robbie Williams fan, you've probably gathered that so far. In a way I probably prefer Take That, be it sort of when he was in Take That during their main early years, or subsequently after he left, what was it, 1995 he quit the group. But I listened to this, I wanted to give it a fair go and give it fair judgment for this video. So it starts with Lazy Days, that was a single, top 10 single I think, and a pretty good album opener. It's very sort of well produced Britpop for the most part, this album, and Lazy Days is kind of a stereotypical example of that. The next track is the title track, Live Through a Lens. That was kind of like a power pop, almost pop punk kind of thing. It sounded like it could have been something that Busted or someone like that, McFly maybe, would have recorded. It didn't really work for me, to be honest. Ego a Go-Go, there again, I wasn't overly keen. Then comes obviously the big one, the one that really saved his career, Angels is next. It's a great song, Angels, I won't deny it, but I have heard it way too often. Admittedly, when I put this album on, this was the first time I'd heard it in a little while, but throughout kind of the last, 25 plus years, it's a ubiquitous song, really, and it's kind of been adopted by a lot of people as, oh, we need to play this at our wedding or our funeral or our bar mitzvah or our cat's circumcision or something like that. And it's just, I've got Angels fatigue, I've had it for a long time really. Next comes South of the Border, which I forgot actually was also a single. It was his lowest charting single off this album. I think it only got something like number 14, which isn't terrible, but for, a big high profile star like Robbie Williams, coming off the split from Take That and his various tabloid exploits, his stint in rehab, etc. I think his record label, Up to Angels anyway, was expecting a lot more from him and from this album. So South of the Border, by Robbie's usual standards, didn't do great, but it's not a bad single actually. I would argue it's possibly the strongest single for me on the album. Next is Old Before I Die, another very Britpop style song. Obviously this album came out during the midst of, or maybe towards the end, I would say actually, it being 97, of the Britpop boom. Next, One of God's Better People. Not bad, I quite enjoyed that. Another one I'm really sick of hearing is Let Me Entertain You, which was the 5th, I think, and final single taken from this album in 1998. And then a few months later, Millennium would have come out, and then his second album, I've Been Expecting You, and yes, I will be reviewing that in this series eventually. I've never been overly fond of Let Me Entertain You, to be honest. I get that it's kind of an anthem for people, and apparently, from what people have told me and from what I've heard, because Robbie opens with that at every concert, at every gig, it's a real sort of crowd raiser, and I understand that. I get the feeling, and it's not going to happen, but if I ever saw Robbie Williams live, and that was the first thing, which apparently it always is, then I would probably enjoy it live, but as a kind of sitting at home studio track, it just annoys me, to be honest. And the last 3 tracks of the album are all kind of real sort of bland and nothing to write home about. Killing Me, Clean, and the final song on here, Baby Girl Window.
Well, these are strange days we're living in today. C'est la vie, I say, I hope I'm old before I die. I hope I live to relive the days gone by. I hope I'm old before I die. Well, tonight I'm gonna live for today, so come along for the ride. I hope I'm old before I die.
It's an average album. I'm not going to say it's terrible, because it isn't, but I think Robbie's done better. I've not listened to the other 2 Robbie albums I've got in years, but I will be listening to them again as I review them for this series. Let's see if he improves on this. I've got a feeling he will. I know that there's certain tracks off the second album and the third one as well that I do actually like a lot. Live Through a Lens, it did end up selling a lot, and it did end up getting to #1 eventually, mainly thanks to Angels and Let Me Entertain You. But for me, it was a bit of a damp squib of a debut for someone with a lot of hype and a lot of expectation regarding his solo career. But that is Robbie Williams' first solo studio album, Life Through a Lens, and that was Minidisc Monday for today. Thank you all for watching, hope you enjoyed this. I want to give special thanks, as I always do, to my wonderful subscribers and generous patrons. I'm going to go now, and please join me in 2 weeks' time for the next instalment of Minidisc Monday. Cheers, everyone. See ya!